partnering with Deloitte on a Multiplier Leadership workshop to close out a Friday afternoon this week. My name is Christy Davis. I'm with TBN Asia, and it's a pleasure to welcome everyone here. So just to get started, we want to just know a little bit more about who we've got in the room. So I'm just going to launch a poll here, and if you wouldn't mind, just take a look at these couple of questions. And can everyone see the poll? You guys can see people see the poll? Or just give me a thumbs up or something. Yeah. If you could tell us where you're joining from. And there's a couple of questions there. All right, where you're joining us from. Malaysia, thanks, Renee, welcome. Great to have Dignity for Children with us today, thanks. All right, and so then, as you can see, just keep scrolling down that poll. So we'd like to know who you are. Filling that in. Are you familiar with the multipliers concept? All right. Hamza and Farah, you've got your work cut out for you here. Most have not heard of this before. And is this your first TBN Asia webinar? Kind of generally split, yes, but no. So we've got a couple of returnees with us. So thanks so much. I'll leave this open for just about 10 more seconds. So if you haven't voted, please do pop in there and let us give us a little bit more information about yourselves. Where are you joining from? Are you familiar with this? And who are you, by the way? I'd love to know more about who you are. All right, so I'm going to close that poll down. Thank you all so much. And just as we get started, I'm going to pass over here to our facilitators. At any time, if anyone here's got questions or something's not clear, pop it in the chat and say, hey, wait a minute, can you explain that again? Or didn't hear you quite closely enough. We are here to serve you and make sure that everybody leaves here with a really clear understanding of what multiplier leadership is and how it works. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our amazingly wonderful colleagues from Deloitte that are becoming friends. They're just amazing women, Hamza and Farah, over you, and Eve, sorry, Hamza, Eve, and Farah, over to the three of you to take us forward. Oh, and sorry, I should actually introduce Wayne, my colleague Wayne, who's, sorry you guys, it's a Friday afternoon, you gotta give me a break. That's Wayne in the red shirt, which I think most of you probably know our infamous Wayne, who's co-facilitating with us. And with that, then I'll turn it over to Eve, Hamza, and Farah to take us forward. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you, Christy. I think you need a coffee. That's the fix for Friday evening. And hello to everyone else. Thank you for choosing to spend your Friday evening with us. My name is Hamza, and I'm a management consultant here with Deloitte Singapore. So my profession allows me to not only get to know interesting people, but also to design different learning experiences to enable leaders to think exponentially and sharpen their capabilities through coaching. Over the last few years of my career, I've had the privilege to coach the APAC leaders from some of the Fortune 500 companies on several topics, including exponential thinking, multiplier leadership, leading organizations in times of crisis, and the future of work. Joining with me today is my partner in crime, Farah. Farah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Hamza. And thank you, everyone, for having us here today on a Friday evening. So I'm very excited and looking forward to have a very meaningful session with each and every one of you today. So I have a very long name, but you can call me Farah. And I'm currently working with Deloitte Consulting's workforce transformation practice based in Malaysia. So leadership has been a topic of my interest for the longest time, but I don't claim myself to be an expert in this topic. So I'm just here to share my experiences, my knowledge, what I've learned and noticed throughout my time preparing multiple leadership development programs for senior leaders across top companies in Southeast Asia. So my hope for this session is that everyone could be engaged, bring in your own experience, your own stories and insights, and create a safe space for everyone to just share their experiences and stories for today. All right, over to you back, Hamza.
Eve, how about you say us a hi?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's a Friday afternoon. I hope you guys have a good time. I'm from Deloitte Southeast Asia Consulting as well. And to be more engaging in this session, would you like to turn on your video so that we can have a better positive connection with everyone here? All right.
Woo! Thank you.
Thank you, Rini. Thank you, Roseanne.
That's the
Thank you,
Friday
everyone.
spirit. Hello.
Nice to meet you. Yeah, don't be shy. Just turn on your video and we get to know one another. And you'll enjoy this fantastic session with us.
It's so nice to see faces. Terrific.
Brilliant. Wayne, do you want to bring up the slides? Thank you. Should we go to the guidelines? All right, quick look at our house rules today. I know there's so many things on this slide, but I'm not going to go through each of them. Our session heavily depends on your engagement, which means we just want your video on for most of the time as much as possible. But don't feel pressured to do so in case you're driving or if you're outside. We just want you to be comfortable enough to contribute and engage. But stay muted if you are in a cafe or if there's any background noise around you. Yeah. Next one. And of course, we all want to maximize your learnings, right? So be present physically and mentally. If possible, resist that humanly urge to check your email or other notifications for a while and leave your comfort zone and participate in all the discussions. But most importantly, this webinar is your psychological safe zone. Anything and everything you share with us today will remain confidential. And since some of them might even include personal leadership stories or your team members, let's keep our judgments aside, shall we? Next slide. All right, so what's in store today? We will start off by talking about our leadership and particularly how much we know about our teams and what inspires them. And then we dive into this concept called what is a multiply leadership? And then we go for a short break before getting into this action-packed discussion around the idea of accidental diminishers. We would, of course, wrap up the day with a small action item for yourself to try in the next 30 days as we close into the day. But before we do all of that exciting stuff, let's hear from you. What are your expectations from this webinar? Next one. If you can just go over to menti.com in your mobile and type this code, that'd be great. Or if you rather prefer to type it in the chat, that's great as well. Rosemary, learn something new. Okay. Learn leadership. Self-awareness, wow. No pressure on us, Farah.
Shall I share the Menti screen? We have, let me see, 2 answers over there.
Wow, Renee, that's awesome. You want to understand more about yourself. Good.
So we have to learn new perspectives on leadership, learn more with the TBN community. Interesting. Improve my leadership skills, be a better team player, how to multiply as a leader.
Very nice. I mean, we're not far off.
Yeah.
Good to know that we're not really far off from your expectations. So if you can actually bring back the objectives, the slide. To see the gurus.
See the gurus.
The next one. Thanks, Wayne. Okay, so like I said, it's really good that we're not very far off from your expectations, because we will be focusing on understanding what makes your teams motivated, when they're motivated, and how you can create more such inspiring moments for them. Learn how to be a talent magnet in your business or in your company, and empower people around you to bring their best performance. And last but not least, bringing that self-awareness on your accidental diminisher traits as a leader or a manager, right? Next slide. Okay, time for some energizer on a Friday evening. Over to you, Farah.
Oh,
All right. Thank you, Hamza. So if possible for this activity, just a very short activity, if everyone could just switch on the video, because it requires you to use your hands. That would be very, very nice. So I'll be sharing a few statements one by one. And if you relate to the statements, you can keep your hand on your forehead. So you can start by doing this. And then if you agree to the statement, you can just keep adding your fingers to your forehead by the end of this activity. So we hope that, by the end of this activity, short activity, we'll know who has worked with a diminishing boss previously. So are we all ready? All right. Okay. So the first statement is, if put up your finger if you have been working for more than 12 hours on average in the last 2 weeks. All right, I see some fingers raising. Second one, if you have a boss who does not know about your passion or your aspirations. All right. Next one, if you are unhappy at your job. Maybe. Next one, if you feel afraid to voice out your opinions or your ideas. All right, if you don't feel comfortable being yourself. I love how Rini has no fingers up. So you really have a multiplier leader. You have a great leader. Okay, and the last one, if you feel that you're not growing or learning in your organization. All right, so I think everybody didn't raise their fingers on that. So who has the most fingers up? Let me see. HB Ois, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but you have your four fingers up.
Yeah, I don't know. This one?
Does this count? All right. Okay. So I'm so glad that everybody is well aware of where they are and how they feel about their working experience.
Actually, I'm very curious to know.
Yeah.
Would you like to share about that, HBO? What makes you very unhappy, or is your boss in the call?
Well, maybe I misunderstood the question because I'm the boss. So if I'm my own boss, then I'm unhappy with myself, no?
So this was a question to reflect on your experience, if perhaps you have been working with somebody else previously, if you have experienced such situation before. Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next activity, Hamza.
Yep, let's play the video. Do you think that was stressful? Yes. Do you think he inspired that contestant? Or was he clear at communicating his feedback? Did he sound like someone with a vision? Was he adding any value? No, right? He sounded very unpleasant and very deliberate while delivering these sarcastic comments. Do you think he realized the impact he was having on the young chef? And was anything he said at all useful for his professional growth? Not really, right? Next slide. So as leaders or managers of your teams, exactly, energy wasted trying to decipher the boss. Like, he wasn't even clear whether he likes the dish or not. So what I'm trying to say is that as leaders or managers of your team, are you clear what energizes them the most? Where do you think they derive their inspiration? And what type of work do you think adds meaning to their job? And if you're a team member, do you think your manager or leader knows what motivates you to do the best? Next slide. As we reflect on these questions about our teams, I'd like to pause for a moment and think. I want you to think about this. Who comes to your mind when you think of an inspirational person? You can type down in chat any of the inspirational person that comes to your mind. Jesus, okay? When I think of inspiration, one person that comes to my mind immediately is Lee Kuan Yew and how he inspired Singapore as a nation to rise together. So any such examples? Buddha, yeah. Any recent political figures, celebrities, or Elon Musk? Yes. Obama. Hannah Yo. Ginsburg. Nelson Mandela. Wow, Jacinda Ardern, you got that. You got that right, actually. Next slide. So when we think about inspirational people, we think about the likes of Obama, Greta Thunberg, Gandhi, Jacinda Ardern, Churchill, Martin Luther King. They have been instrumental in history in driving their countries, race, and generations forward. And they have done so really courageously with their speeches. But let's keep this aside for a minute. And if you can actually unmute yourself and share with us what truly makes you inspired. Next slide, Wayne. Do you guys like to share what are some of the things that makes you inspired?
So Hamza, I'll kick off. Actually, I think some people may put stuff in the chat, but I'm inspired when I see others extending themselves kind of selflessly, just extending a hand, whether it's to a colleague who needs a hand, or if it's, to somebody, I don't know, crossing the street, an elderly person, but just someone that is looking and working outside of themselves and looking around to see how that they might be a resource to somebody else.
Wow. I mean, that action about like someone helping somebody else do or achieve something, coaching someone else, those are some of the things that really empowers and inspires me too. And I see some of the responses in the chat, like when my boss throws out a big vision and reminds me of what we're aiming for. Good. Encouraged when a leader is able to be hard on issues, when someone manages to thrive despite challenges. Interesting. Very interesting answers, right? So what is another thing that I find interesting is that when we ask people who is inspirational, we talk about the Obamas, Simon Sinek, and all of the celebrities and people who are popular. But when we actually ask people when you're inspired, their speeches are not the first thing that pop up. The inspiration we derive from these speeches are momentary. While they may influence us to change our perspectives, when we are really inspired is primarily focused on the actions and the micro habits that drive those behaviors. So we reflected on what makes you inspired, right? Now it's time for you to think about what are some of the instances where you felt your team members are inspired. What are some of your observations? Would you like to share? You can also type them in the chat.
I think when they have been given a challenge that maybe they were not expecting to be able to do well, but then they have performed maybe beyond their own expectations.
Challenges, yep. Have you seen someone struggle through each of that, but then they are able to find answers on their own, behaviors of those sorts? When people try something new, when people get out of their comfort zone. When they're given opportunities they did not expect, yeah. Any other responses? We have quite a few other participants. When someone say, I'll die for you. Strong. There was a clear synergy and different ones felt we're moving in the same direction. Yeah. And they see what they have to do, what they do have a great positive impact. Yep. So meaning, purpose, challenges, and struggle. Those are some of the SARTs, right? Okay. Wayne, next slide. Roizen, when they're really clear, next slide, on what they're working towards. Next one slide. So now that we sort of have better insights into what makes your teams motivated, the actions and behaviors that drive them, we want to create more such moments in our work life, don't we? After all, why wouldn't we want our team members to be productive, engaged, and inspired at work? But in order for us to better answer this question, we need to understand what a multiplier leadership is and what are the traits of that multiplier leader. So over to you, Farah, for the next segment on the multiplier leadership.
All right. Thank you, Hamza. Wayne, could we go to jump into the slide? What is a multiplier leadership? All right, so let's just dive into this topic. Sorry, Wayne, the next one. All right, so before we begin, I would like for us all to just take a few seconds. You don't have to type this out. You don't have to shout it if you don't want to. And just really think about, just imagine your favorite manager or supervisor that you have worked with previously. And if you can't think, if you have just started your career being a startup and you can't think of anyone that you have worked with previously, you can also think about your professors or your teachers and just honestly ask yourself this question. Did I like working with this person because he or she made my job easy? Or because he or she believed in me and inspired me to do my best? Let's just take 10 seconds to think about this. Was it because they made our job easier or because they inspired us to do our best? So now, the skills that usually got us into a position of leadership are not necessarily the same skills that we often need to lead. And sometimes leadership requires a shift in our thinking, a shift in the way we behave. So Liz Weissman, the author of this book called Multiplier Leadership, was working in the Oracle Corporation for 15 years in leadership development. And she noticed that there were two types of leaders. Some leaders managed to make everyone around them feel inspired, right? They seem to be the kind of leaders who get amazing results out of their people, really great and smart ideas. But then there are some leaders who are not be able to do that, right? They are leaders who seem to be draining the energy and capability out of the people, out of their team members. And sometimes you might find even yourself in a position where you felt like around this leader, I just can't seem to give my opinion. I just feel scared. I just feel like whatever I'm going to say is going to be wrong. So there are those kind of leaders, and they seem to be creating a team of people who are unproductive. So let's just dive in a little bit more and trying to understand what is a diminisher and what is a multiplier. How are they as a person, right? So let's start first by understanding diminisher. So unfortunately, maybe most of us have actually worked for this kind of leaders. And sometimes, in fact, most of the times, we don't even realize it. So because they don't come across as somebody like Hitler or Stalin, it's not obvious, because sometimes they could come across as somebody who is a leader that you actually aspire to be, because they're so smart, they're so brilliant, they're so visionary, they are something that you want to be. But then you don't even realize that sometimes being around them, being in the presence of these leaders, they have a diminishing effect on you, on your performance. Because sometimes you feel that, like what I mentioned earlier, you just can't seem to be speaking at all. Like suddenly you feel like, oh my God, I don't know what to say in this kind of meeting whenever they are around you. So diminishers, they're often very smart and they're capable, but they work in a way that really stifles the smarts and capabilities out of all the people around them. They drain the intelligence from their team. So they are so focused on their capability, their own ideas, their own vision, that they forget to just take a moment and look and see the people around them and how they can contribute to the ideas. So on the other hand, multipliers are usually leaders are almost the opposite. They inspire and multiply the performance of the people around them. So they are also smart and capable, intelligent people, but they use their intelligence in a very, very different way. So they use their intelligence in a way that they invite others. They even provoke your thoughts and your opinions. And you know, they always say the best leaders are usually the kind of leaders who make everyone in the room feel a lot more smarter. So the key thing that we want to note is that multipliers are not the kind of leaders who always make people around them feel good all the time. They are not saint leaders, nor they are leaders who are usually positive or upbeat, you know, but they are leaders who really try to find ways to empower their team members. And as we go through this conversation, we will discover in what ways do they actually do that, right? So Wayne, maybe next slide, please. Okay, so what's unique about multipliers and why should we aspire to be them, right? So they create high performance and in that sense they receive 2 times more capability and productivity from the employees. Why is that the case? Because they really believe that everyone is smart, and not just that, everyone is able to figure things out. They believe that people who are underutilized when their current work doesn't people are usually underutilized when they are working on something that doesn't really use their full potentials or their full abilities. So they create a highly motivating work environment where people are required and allowed to think for themselves. So this positive work environment can sometimes be seen as very uncomfortable. So sometimes you might get a leader who you feel that, oh my God, this leader always push me, always make me do things that I don't feel comfortable doing. And it can be quite intense, but it is an area where fear is actually lifted and creative thinking is actually encouraged. And without you realizing it, you are actually moving beyond your comfort zone. And they understand, this multipliers leader understand that performance usually grows through engagement. And they believe that collective is always better than individual. So they have this belief that, you know, there's no such thing as impossible, and we're going to get it done, right? So, and they utilize people at nearly 100% of their capacity. So they use their, and not just using their talent and their innate skills and whatnot, but they also connect them with more opportunities, shine a spotlight on them, make them visible in the organization so that they can further grow themselves, not just within the organization, but also outside the organization. So sometimes we have leaders who, like, you know, if who start a conversation and ask, you know, if you feel like you're not growing in this organization anymore, I do not want to keep you here. I would rather you jump out of the company and let you go out there and learn more, if that is what is best for you. So they don't just hone talent for themselves for their own benefit. They would always think about their team members. So the next slide, Wayne. Thank you, Wayne. So I guess I want to spend most of my time talking about this one particular side, like what can we do to become a multiplier? So the first one, multiplier is often a talent magnet. They attract and optimize talent. So we all know what a magnet's job is, right? So a magnet's entire purpose in life is basically to just draw other things to itself. So what if you become the human equivalent of that magnet? So it might sound a little bit weird at first, but that's exactly what Liz Westman was trying to suggest. Because a multiplier isn't really just somebody who encourages others. They are actually a talent magnet because they attract talented people. So one of the basic ways we can achieve this is actually just really spend time to get to know your team members and plug them into the right roles. So that even mean that you might recognize that if somebody, let's say somebody doesn't even have a college degree, and you recognize that there might be a possible way that they have innate skills in different things, and that make them the perfect candidate for this job that you have. Or it could also mean just acknowledging that, for instance, maybe somebody is excelling at creating with their hands, they're good with making things with their hands, but they're not really good at traditional job and whatnot. But these leaders believe that they are still talented, but you just need to find the right job for them that fit their skills. And they will also get rid of obstacles that are holding their employees back, whether that means, dealing with some interpersonal conflicts in your department or shifting some roles around. So I had one leader who told me, Farah, I need you to do this, but I realized that I have a tendency to sort of micromanage a little bit. I tend to send a lot of emails, but if you feel that my emails are holding you back, you feel free to just ignore them and focus on getting the job done. So I had a leader like that, and that to me meant a lot. That like they give you a opportunity to focus on your job, but also realize that sometimes they could be the blockers themselves, and they want to remove themselves being a blocker to your job, right? So the next one is a liberator, and I think this is my favorite one. Liberator is all about how you can liberate the intelligence of the people around you. How can you make sure that they feel comfortable to come in and share their ideas and whatnot? So, like I say, some leaders tend to take all the oxygens in the room. They are always the one who's talking. They're always the one sharing their ideas and whatnot. But the multiplier leaders who practices this liberator discipline become a leader who can play big when they need to, but actually play small for most of the time to allow other ideas and other contribution. So one of the ways you can actually do this, and this might sound cliche, but it's really is about allowing people to make mistakes. And it's not just simply about you going to your employee and be like, you know what, there's no mistakes, there are only lessons learned, and saying all these things, we grow from mistakes. Not just about saying it, but you actually have to mean it. And how you mean it is through your reaction when they do make a mistakes. How you react when your employees make a mistake is the most crucial thing. So let me tell you a story. When I was an intern in Cambodia for a few years back, and I sent an email. So as an intern who just joined 1 month, I sent an email to the CEO of the company, asking him to sort of like submit something. I need this email, or I need you to do this by 6 p.m. And I didn't even realize that it was wrong. I didn't even realize that what I did was sort of like stepping the boundaries of the hierarchy, because I didn't realize that the company was quite hierarchical in that sense. So then my boss, the immediate thing that he did was like, he texted me and he was like, did you just do that? Did you just send an email to our CEO asking him to submit this by this? I'm like, yeah, I did. And he started laughing. He laughed so bad. I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. I didn't even know like it was a mistake, And he laughed, and he was like, you shouldn't have done that, right? And I'm like, oh dear, Then I was like calling my colleagues. I'm like, is there a way for me to retract my email? I'm like, I'm gonna get fired today and whatnot. And he was like, don't even bother retracting email. It's done deal, It's like he was like, but he said it in a very joking way. And what he did that I really appreciate was that he went and met the CEO after that. He said that and he said that, there's this email from one of my interns. She didn't mean it that way, but she meant it from the good place of heart kind of thing. So he kind of saved me, and since then he made it a joke. He made it a joke until now that we met up like a few days back, and he said that you're that intern who sent that. But what he did was very meaningful in the sense that I know from that moment of time, even if I do mistakes, he will be there to protect me. He is there to make sure that I don't go back home thinking about this incident for 10 days and 10 nights. He made fun of it, although it's not always the case for every situation, but he realizes that people do make mistakes. People need to learn from making mistakes, but his reaction was what matters to me so much, right? All right, moving on to another trait of a multiplier is they are also challengers. They ask questions, and they don't ask questions just for the sake of simply asking questions or just proving themselves that they are listening to you. But they ask challenging questions, and they also challenge back your answers by pushing forward not pushing back. I don't know whether anyone has ever experienced this before, but sometimes when I do a presentation to my leader, sometimes the way they ask the questions, it seems like there is no correct answer. It's like whatever I say is going to be wrong. It's some sort of those professors also, they ask like, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? And then you be like, yeah, no matter what we say, he has a particular answer that he wants to hear. And no matter what, we're going to say it wrong. So why bother, right? So it's also about the way you challenge your employees' answers and also how you respond back to their answers that really, really matter. But most importantly, often not, multipliers, they don't give the answers. They just ask you a question that really provoke you to think and help you discover and see opportunities for yourself. And another way we could be a challenger is also by encouraging people to stretch when you observe people stick to what they're actually really, really good at. And last but not least, they are debate makers. So they really challenge you. But they also would love to listen to you as much as you are talking. So they often say that it's not about we cannot do this, but it's all about how can we do this better, right? Okay, so that is from my session. Now I'm going to pass back to Hamza for the more exciting bit, which is the diminishing traits of a leader.
No, in no way we could ever like match up to your internship experience. Maybe it didn't keep you awake for like 10 days, but it sure remains in your head after like so many years.
Yeah.
Good job. Asking CEO for a status update. Brilliant.
Lesson learned.
But isn't it beautiful, guys, if every one of our leaders and managers could be multipliers? Because diminishers are a problem, are they not? But if you really think about it, nobody wakes up in their right mind in the morning and determined to say, hey, I'm going to make this employee's life a hell today. At least not most of the time. It's not how it works. So most of the time, people don't realize that they are being diminishers. And that's the group of people we call accidental diminishers. So in Farah's example, she says that there was this one kind of professor kind of a leader who cannot seem to agree or listen to any of the answers, and no answer is right answer because they have already fixated their head on something. That's a clear sign of a diminisher. Whereas accidental diminishers are the good people, the nice people with the best of intentions, and they think they're creating a positive work culture and making the world beautiful. And most of these people have no clue of the diminishing impact. So is it really possible to create the greatest damage when we hold the highest of expectations? Is it possible that the most noble our intentions, the most damaging impact that we can leave on our teams? And that is the question I want for all of us to think about, as we go through this segment in the next hour or so. How am I, with the best of intentions of my team, be creating a diminishing effect on them? And I read this conversation somewhere between a stranger and a Buddha. The stranger asks Buddha, how do I achieve enlightenment in life? Buddha gives him this sarcastic look, ignores him for some time, and then goes into the meditated state. And then the stranger goes ahead and asks him, Buddha, how do I achieve enlightenment in my life? And then he says, I don't know, dude, like I'm probably millennializing it, this conversation, but he says, I don't know. The stranger gets furious and he exclaimed, you're Buddha. How can you not know you achieved enlightenment? So he calmly tells him, I know how I achieved enlightenment, my friend, but that doesn't mean I know how you can achieve enlightenment in your life. That's the point I'm trying to make. We all know what to do when there's a problem. If you identify a diminishing trait, if you find something is broken, you fix it. If you think you're being a diminisher, stop being one. We know what to do. But often the problem is we don't realize that. Because the real change comes with that increased level of self-awareness. And in this segment, we want you to try and build that. So here's the format, right? We will be going through 6 accidental diminisher traits as explained by the author Liz Wiseman. We will watch a short, like 30 to 60-second video for each of the 6 traits, followed by a brief discussion. So we play one trait and then we go through a discussion. So this is where we really are leaning in towards your participant engagement, right? And I suppose some of you may have already taken this quiz by Liz Wiseman about the, knowing your accidental diminisher score. But if you haven't, that's totally fine. So are you guys ready? Brilliant. Wayne, can we go to the first trait, which is the idea guy?
I want to share with you a few ways that I find this happens over and over. A number of these are things that I really struggle with. You know, not the least of which is this very first, the idea guy. Now, the idea guy is the person that just bounds into the office bursting with ideas. Hey, what about this? And I was out on my run and I had this thought and I went to the REACH conference and they've got all these ideas rumbling around their head and they're spewing ideas. They're a fountain of ideas. And it's not that we think that our ideas are better than anyone else. We think that our ideas will do what? Inspire, spark, catalyze other ideas, right? What actually happens to those of us who are working around the idea guy? We shut down. Or we spend our time chasing ideas. Hey, that sounds pretty good. Let me do this. Okay, a website, great. A task force, okay. A survey, and pretty soon where do we end up? Exactly back where we started. And we start to think, well, I don't need to worry my pretty little head over this because if I need an idea, where do I go? Yeah, the idea guy. I go to the fountain because it goes off every hour, right? And I'll just grab one of those ideas and do something with it.
Well, do any of you resonate with, or do you think you identify yourself as this idea guy? I know someone in the chat, Craig, has said that one's me. Craig, do you mind sharing? How do you resonate with this trait?
Yes, I'm full of ideas. I like solving problems. And when I'm with the team, I'm discussing, and sometimes they're trying to catch too many ideas. And I have realized through this that I'm throwing too many ideas out and I need to just ruminate a bit more or hold back, what they call the holding tank, a little to avoid confusion and just help keep people focused.
And is that self-awareness something that you've achieved recently, Craig, or you still have trouble?
No, just recently. I mean, I've been aware of the need for that, but this has helped to crystallize, to sharpen that, because I took the test before we did this a week or two back, and it's helped me to become more self-aware in that.
And is there any particular feedback you've received from your team members, Craig? Did they voice out their concerns, or?
No, they didn't really. Well, I suppose we were discussing it, but I'm actually just directly back from a team meeting, and I don't know if it was any clearer, but at least I'm aware that that's something. In fact, we've booked, or we're sorting out a day away together as a management team in about 10 days' time. And we're going to just plan and put it all onto a chart and see, any new ideas where they fit in, so that people can follow the logic.
Brilliant. I'm really glad you're on your path to self-awareness. That's the best place to begin. I'm also very, interested to learn from all of you the different ways of working in which certain companies in different geographic locations. For example, in a regional, like home, family-owned company where structure could be more hierarchical, meetings typically go like the boss has loads of ideas and he just unloads them. Whereas in certain startup kind of a culture, it's typically inclusive, where every team member gets a chance to kind of voice out and contribute to the meetings. Are there any such subtle differences you notice in your startups or other companies? Anyone? Renee, Lisa?
Hamza, can you share the question again?
Okay, so what I'm trying to understand is also the differences between like startup based in different locations and also between different types of businesses. Certain businesses tend to be more hierarchical, where the boss just walks into the meetings and just unloads his ideas, and everybody's like expected to work like minions, just executing those ideas. Whereas in certain team settings, it could be more inclusive, where everybody gets to contribute. There are also certain type of people who would just call out names if they have observed that particular person in the meeting is quiet, introverted, if I may. So any such observations?
Maybe I'll go. We do see a fair bit of that in certain markets where it's very hierarchical, a lot more top heavy. So when the boss goes in and says that, let's do this, pretty much everyone says, okay, and you do see on the other side, there are other in different geographies and different cultures where it's a lot more of everyone gives that. Okay, where did this come from?
Sorry, go for it.
Okay. So yeah, we do see quite a bit of disparity in terms of the hierarchy. The culture can affect how equally distributed the inputs are from the team members, definitely.
Okay.
Aku mesti lengket terus di situ ya kan. Jadi kan.
We also have a response from LJ in the engineering industry. So it's logical for someone to take the lead and everybody pitch in. I think taking the lead is quite different, right, LJ? Yes, someone has to like facilitate that particular meeting, but there is no climate of psychological safety. So for example, the same boss that Farah was talking about, I work with the same boss. And if we were to happen to be in the same meeting, no matter what answer you give, it satisfies that person. It's because they have already fixated their mind on hearing certain things out. He kind of shuts out everybody else. And if we make an effort to kind of challenge him, he'd be like, oh, really? How are we supposed to like react to that? Right? So in that case, I would say it's also partly because it's a corporate and because the hierarchy is established. Like if they are the director or the partner, then okay, who are managers and senior consultants to go and challenge them. But that is kind of like a stark contrast, right? Whereas some of my friends who work in startup, they're more like, it doesn't matter if you're like CXO or whatever. You can just walk in and you can advise that particular person because you are the specialist and you're doing the job that you're being paid for, right? So I guess that's the kind of thing that I'm trying to arrive at. And coming back to the trait, which is the idea guy, sometimes the diminishing effect that they may not realize that they are having is because they're throwing in so many things at people, and a lot of people are over exhausted and burnt out. They just don't realize that if they don't end up doing some of these ideas, executing some of these ideas, they wouldn't even realize that these ideas were thrown at them. And that's like making them run around the circle. So I think that's one of the things that I wanted to call out.
Yeah, sorry, Hamza, just if I could just add on this, right? I think this is out of all the traits, I think this is one of the toughest because it actually really comes from a good place of heart that you want the best for your team. And sometimes you feel that in that process, your ideas are good, are amazing. And on the other hand, being the team members ourselves, I've been in the situation where I just automatically feel that it's probably the way they always say their ideas make it sound so convincing that you as a team member also automatically believe that their ideas are the best, and there's no room of sort of challenging because you within yourself you felt that is actually a very, very good idea. So even coming from the team members perspective, it's also important for us to be aware if our leader has this kind of diminishing effect so that we could challenge or be aware and then and push ourselves further to make sure that this is not continue.
Yeah, and most of what Farah and myself are trying to share, the insights come from a team member about the boss kind of a thing, whereas you bring in the perspective of from the boss to so the top down meets bottom up kind of perspective is what we're trying to share here. So if there's no other responses, maybe we can go to the second trait.
I want to share with you What about the leader who's always on, always engaged, always present, always something to say, always something to contribute? Perhaps, like maybe a few people in this room, they were blessed with the gift of gab. What happens around the always-on leader? Yeah, there's no room for anyone else because, right, well, they've like expanded like a gas, right? And they're taking up all the space in the meeting. And people are thinking, well, I would contribute if I could breathe, right? If there were any oxygen in the room. So they shut down other people. Well, what do we do to the always-on leader? Because they do more than shut down others. What else happens? What do you do with the human being who lacks an off switch? Yeah, you tune them out. And what do they begin to sound like? Exactly that. Is this like the Peanuts generation? Yeah, they sound, I mean, it took me till I was about 30-something to figure out that that teacher was actually talking. And it was just the kids who couldn't hear anything. Yeah, they start to shut down others, but we shut down them. And we don't hear these kind of leaders. It's like they're talking and they don't know their microphone isn't on.
And I think this scenario is quite common ever since we started adopting the virtual setting, right? It's inconvenient already that people get to not open up when they're in a face-to-face setting. And then when you're in virtual, why bother? Why should I interrupt? This person's gonna come up with the chances anyway. But I think the most important downside of the always-on person is, I think if the boss always has something to say, then I think at some point the employees or team members will stop trying for themselves first. I think they'd be like, even if I were to do customer iteration is completely different. But if the boss were to have so many things to add on, even if it meets the customer expectations, and if they just say, maybe we should add this, maybe we should add that, and it just ends up shutting their spirit down. They're always going to be like, okay, there's something coming ahead. So their prioritization even goes down for each of the things, and their ability to try something different and experiment is also gone because of this trait. Anybody resonate with that? Anybody think that you are being an always on kind of a personality? Oh, I see Lisa's hand go up. Would you like to share, Lisa?
Yeah, I think I was once like that, and not with bad intentions, like you said. It was an effort to save everyone. So from our top management, I mean, like to protect your team, like you know, kind of that things. But I realize now that it doesn't really, not doing a service for them also, and I also do myself a disservice because they rely on me too much, to the extent that I'm very exhausted, and at the time I don't realize that I'm doing it, and I don't realize that it was the source of the problems. Well, yeah, so there's that.
Yeah, I think you pointed it out brilliantly, because they will, not only did they stop trying, they've started coming to you for each and every small queries, which is time consuming for you. When do you get to do your work if you're like firefighting and adjusting, to their queries?
Yes, I was starting to be like a Wikipedia or a Google, like every they expect me to have solutions for everything, even a small thing that even I think they can come up with their own ideas and their own solutions. So it was, but yes, I think it's maybe coming from how I present myself. So yeah.
Yeah, and you had said so yourself, it is the noblest of intentions, right? Because you were trying to watch out for them. But the downside of that, it has created over-reliance on your abilities. Like you sometimes end up feeling that you need a clone of yourself to handle all of this.
Yes, I did.
it was to that extent actually. So thank you.
Sorry, Lisa, which location are you in?
I am in Jakarta, and actually I'm not working in a company anymore. So this was well, I don't know, like 5 to 6 years ago. So right now I'm a medical doctor, so I do my own private practice right now.
Wow. Kudos, especially in times of COVID. So thank you for your service. Anybody would like to share? Is that common in other regions as well? Lisa was sharing from Jakarta's perspective. All right. If there is no other comments, Wayne, should we go to the third trait?
What about the rapid responder? This is the person who's on it. This is like see a bear, shoot a bear kind of logic. This is the person who clears their inbox every 22 minutes. I'm on it, I got it. What happens? And of course their intention is that their fast decisions, their fast actions are going to keep everyone moving fast, right? Agility, flexibility. What happens around the rapid responder? Let them handle it. We all know that feeling, an email note sent to you but copied to that rapid responding boss or colleague. Heaven forbid you have to get up from your chair, go talk to a colleague, run a report, think, for heaven's sakes. And what do when you realize that she's probably already answered? You click delete.
You know, I used to work with this boss a couple of years ago who's a rapid responder. She's a very nice person. She's she moved at that time recently from Australia, very agile, someone who believes that she has to empower other women colleagues. And but one of the challenging things to work with her is she's actually a combination of the idea guy plus always on plus rapid responder. So for example, when I check my inbox every morning, there'll be like 20 emails from her between midnight and 6 a.m. She's always on, coming in with like lots of ideas and responding to every email that she lacked the off switch. Sometimes I was even concerned for her. This person does not sleep. This person, I've never seen her eat lunch. So as much as empowering as she was, giving me lots of chances, exposure, and opportunities, she was also every bit of a challenge, because when I thought that my work meets those client expectations, she'll have something to add, because in her mind, she's trying to make the quality of the work better. And the clients are always happy because they get additional stuff done in shorter amount of time, right? But who ends up exhausted and burnt out? That's me. Needless to say, I don't believe that she had the diminishing kind of she didn't want to necessarily do that. She was having the best of intentions, but then she never realized that she was having this kind of impact. And very unfortunately, she also got hospitalized later because of her lack of sleep. But now she's doing really well, and I really should touch up with her how she's doing. But coming back to you guys, do you have a rapid responder as a boss, or do you think you have this trait yourself? I see one response. LJ is 50% guilty of fast responder. LJ, do you care to elaborate?
Yeah. Previously, I was also like sending a lot of emails at night when like I had time to digest. And then my friend was telling me, you should sit on your emails, wait for like 24 hours. If nobody replies, then you follow up on it. So I'm trying to correct that. Yeah, I'm trying to follow his advice.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. I think we have another interesting response from Natalie. Natalie, do you like to zoom into that? If you don't respond fast, you're deemed as slow or not proactive. That is actually, we can't call it an unconscious bias, right? Because we're deliberately making that choice to perceive someone as someone who's slow and not proactive. They don't respond to that.
I think it's tough because different companies have different cultures, and inherent in that, like different values. So maybe in some cultures it's good to, you know, think this way, and at least in my company it's well, because maybe because we're an NGO, so we often have to be very reflexive and flexible to like what the donor wants or what the sponsor wants, or you know, whatever is being posed as a limitation. So we it becomes the norm in our company to just really respond, and that gets praised a lot, you know. So I mean, it just seems that to be that when people are a little bit less quick on the uptake, that that person is not quite as alert, and it's not necessarily like, you know, it affects their performance review or anything. It just kind of like that's how they get looked at, I guess. But it's not spoken, it's just unspoken. Yeah.
And
can be stressful.
Do you think that's kind of the unwritten KPI for other kinds of emails apart from customers, Natalie, in your company?
Sorry, can you say that again?
So I understand that if you're looking into lead conversion, then, you know, rapid response is kind of a thing to go for, because then each moment you lose is kind of like business lost, right? But do you think that's the kind of unwritten KPI for other kinds of emails, like probably within the internal to the organization?
Yeah, I'm not even referring to emails. It's just like, oh, this opportunity arose with this donor, and then, oh, we should respond like today, or in the words of my boss, I needed this yesterday. Everything is always needed yesterday. So yeah, it's not even emails.
Wow. Thank you. We have a question from Renee. Renee, would you like to voice it out? I'm a bit confused.
Oh, sorry, I meant it like if it's directed to us as leaders, then why would it be bad if we respond to it fast or quick? But I guess I'm thinking in a sense, this applies to us as the leader, right? So if I jump over my staff and respond on behalf, then that will be diminishing.
I guess the accidental diminisher kind of thing comes in when you are, let's say, for example, an email is directed at you and then you rapidly respond, is fine. But then the impact that it creates on your team, like, for example, you might have easily had your, you might be grooming someone to take your position or next level or something. And then if they are keen to kind of share the responsibilities with you, even if it's directed at you, you're empowering the other person to kind of take the reins at some point, right? And by not empowering those people to also explore that option, you're basically taking that exposure or opportunity away. So I guess in a sense, for that particular case, Renee, I would say you're not like stepping onto somebody's shoes, or it's not a bad thing to not step in and respond, but it's probably more like a learning opportunity taken away from the others. So
I think maybe just to clarify as well, I think this is in the context of saying that us as the manager or as the boss comes in and try to respond faster than our staff. If some of the queries is directed directly at us, I guess is our prerogative to figure out how fast we want to respond. I think that's personally okay. But I realize that there's always a danger with responding a bit too rapid at some time, because then it seems like as a manager, I'm always responding very reactive to what is urgent, and all good managers know that there's always urgent and there's always important. So if the manager is always focused on the urgent, chances, unless it's perpetually the organization is in firefighting mode, which is possible, if that's not the case, then it seems like this is a very reactive manager, and it won't bode very well for the whole team as well.
Yeah, just to add on that, Wayne and Hamza, I think this replying to email as fast as possible, that it's just one of the examples of a rapid responder, right? But the idea of a rapid responder is just about you as leader thinking that you have to be the first person to think about solving anything, solving a problem, replying to email that my team can't take the first cut at it. You know, I have to be the first person to be there. And I'm the the person that is responsible to solve the problem first. So it's that idea of like you, in that sense, you don't allow other people to take a chance to try and solve it first, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think LJ brings up an interesting point, right? If you want to clear off the plate before a lot of things pile up, and that is something that I call like a completion bias. You need to check these things off your list. The lesser things you have on your task list, the more, I don't know, you fall asleep fast. Like it doesn't keep you up at night. You're not on a firefighting mode. But do you think subconsciously we're doing our team members good because of that? Do you think you are doing yourself? I think that's again like a personal choice to make. If rapid responding is a sort of a mode that is keeping your sanity, I think, and as long as it does not create like a diminishing impact on your team members, I think there's no harm. But one of the important thing to kind of probably using this webinar as a jumpstart, you could try and figure out from your team members, do you identify any of these traits? Like maybe you already have that self-awareness of certain traits, but there are some things that your team members may have noticed. Use this webinar as a jumpstart to kind of do a check-in with them. All right, Natalie, you have another question. Delegating quickly? No, I don't think so. Unless you're delegating it to the same person over and over again. All right. If there are no more comments on this, maybe we could go to the fourth trait.
What about the rapid responder? Or what about this one? This one strikes home to me. The optimist. This is the positive, can-do, sunny side kind of leader. Haven't we been told for years that leaders need to be optimistic? I mean, I've read all the research, the data, all the positive physiological benefits of optimism. But what happens when the leader sees the sunny side? What role do other people get to play? I learned this one with a sting. This one came as a hard learning lesson for me. It was a couple years ago. I am working on a pretty complex project, a really intense piece of research and writing. And at one point in the project, my colleague says to me, he goes, "Liz, I need you to stop saying that." Naturally curious, I said something brilliant like, "Saying what?" He goes, "You know that thing you say all the time." Well, I had no clue what it was I said all the time. And so it was like he'd been waiting months to give me this little speech. And he said, "How hard can it be? We can do this. We've got this. We can figure it out. How hard can it be?" Now I'm sensing this optimism. And what I'm explaining to him is actually that's my way of saying we're smart, we're capable, we'll figure this out, we can do it. Which I thought was particularly helpful. And he said, "That is the thing I need you to stop saying." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because what we're doing, Liz, is hard. And as my manager, I need you to acknowledge it." Acknowledge it, Liz. And I'm like, oh, choking it back. I'm like, you know what? What we are doing is hard. It's hard. And of course, I'm thinking, because I'm taking in the feedback as we all would, right? I'm like, I can stop saying that. If that is diminishing to him, I can stop saying that because how hard can that be? Well, you know, I found out it's actually pretty hard. It's pretty hard, but I've learned to add entirely new phrases to my vocabulary. I say things now like, what we're doing is hard. They're very sophisticated phrases. It's hard. We're going to struggle. We might make mistakes and we're probably going to fail at a few things. My team loves it when they hear this from me, and I love it when they hear it because after I do enough of this, it's like they lean back and they nod their head and they said, "Okay, Liz, here you go." And I say, "But how hard can it be? We can do this." Because they're not asking me to give up my optimism. What they're asking me to do is acknowledge the struggle, that we're learning, that we're growing.
All right, who's guilty of being an optimist?
I always consider myself a realist, so I'm probably not so guilty here.
So we had a guest raise their hand. Would you like to voice it out?
All right, come on, you optimists.
I think I am. But the funny thing is, I'm optimist when it comes to other people, but I'm very pessimistic about myself. It's like I would always tell people, "Ah, you can do it," and then to myself, I'm like, "No, I can't do it."
Downside of consulting, I guess. Anybody resonate with the optimist? Do you think you're being optimistic most of the time?
Okay, since I'll say that yes, I'm an optimist, problematically so, because then I need more of Wayne's realism, where I'll be optimistic to the point where it's to kind of like Liz, it's encouraging. Sometimes it's not even acknowledging, it's hard, but not even acknowledging how hard it actually is, because I'm so optimistic about we can do this, and it's great opportunity, and think of the impact that we can have if we work together, and blah blah blah. But actually I think it's a problem sometimes, because I think it's perceived that I'm being oversimplistic and not acknowledging the complexity or the difficulty sometimes in what it will take to get whatever it is done. So
yeah, I think you sound like a true pioneer, Christy, because, okay, so here's the terminology that we try to use within Deloitte, right? So we categorize personalities for managers or leaders into 4 categories. First one's a pioneer who sees a bigger picture, gets excited at the possibility of doing something. And but they, those tiny nitty-gritty details, the detail-oriented part, it really throws them off, okay? And then we have another category called guardians, who are the exact opposite of pioneers, who likes to micromanage. And if, let's say, for example, if something even sounds optimistic, but if there is no data to back that theory up, they will probably be like, I'm very skeptical about this approach, And then there's this driver who's like part pioneer and part guardian, because they also have big picture, and also they tend to micromanage sometimes. And then we have integrators who are very people oriented, who thinks that they have to be there to rescue their team members all the time. So just thought that it doesn't necessarily have to be a bad thing what you're doing, Christy. It's just one of the traits of the managers and leaders.
Well, I think the key is, if you recognize that, it's to balance that with having other people on your team that have the other qualities to counterbalance.
Exactly.
The pros and the cons of the trait, I suppose.
Imagine if in a team of 5, all 5 are pioneers, nobody's going to look at the details. Everybody's going to be imagining the possibilities, which we call the Disney syndrome.
Oh, that's a good one, Disney syndrome.
Hi, I am definitely an optimist, but maybe not so much keep saying like that can be done, that can be done. But I guess I actually do it and show people that it can be done. And I think I don't know, in my understanding of what is going on today is like we're talking a little bit more about extreme cases, right? Yeah, okay. So in that sense, I am a little bit, because I do realize as I think back in the various work that I've done, and that people actually get so tired and not disappointed. They get so tired because like I'm like just completing projects after projects, and it's like, oh, let's keep doing, let's keep going, kind of thing. And then after a while, I do notice like 1 or 2 will be there like, oh, they're like just totally exhausted. Yeah. And they become actually more negative, because I suppose it's like they felt like, how come nobody tended to us? Nobody know how tired I am. And are you sure we're going to climb the next mountain? No, I could hardly catch my breath, kind of things. Yeah. So I think that is quite possible. And definitely, like you say, it's not a bad thing. It's not to make people look bad or whatever. It's just like, hey, I think we should just garner one another and motivate one another to keep going, and it's so rewarding, right? That you keep conquering mountain after mountains. Yeah, sure. And sorry, I just want to add something that I'm not sure where I fall into in terms of your 4 profiles, because I can also be very detailed. In fact, one of the things that really irritates me at work is when people who are supposed to be detailed and they're just overwhelmed by it. And therefore they say, this cannot be done, this cannot be done. And then I'll just take over and show them that, look, it can be done. Who says it cannot be done? You know, kind of things. Yeah. Sure.
Thanks for sharing that, Xiaongong. You sound like someone, let's climb Mount Everest. And once that is done, you're like, okay, next, what is that we should climb? But like you also rightfully acknowledge, right? It feels like people are always climbing mountains and that they don't get the break that they deserve. It doesn't become a diminishing trait as long as the teams are all on board and they're also feeling the same spirit. But the moment they all start to feel the heat or the pressure, and then they feel like they're constantly, you know, running the cycle, that's when it actually becomes a diminishing trait. So you rightfully acknowledge that. So go self-awareness. Anybody else like to add in? Okay, if not, maybe we could go to the 5th trait.
What about the rescuer? This is the good person. This is perhaps a person who teaches Sunday school. This is the person that doesn't like to see people suffer, struggle, make mistakes, or fail. And what do we do when we see someone struggling and suffering? What does like the good person, the good leader in us want to do? Rescue or help. Sometimes it's this big heroic rescue, right? Like dun da da, I'm here to save the day. We come in on the white horse. We heroically save the day. But more often than not, it's more subtle, right? Often as a leader, we just extend a hand of help. But what happens when the leader is too helpful, too early, too often? What happens to the people around them? Yeah, they become dependent. And what do they come to believe? Yeah.
Any rescuer in our crowd? I personally don't think it's a diminishing trait at all. But I think
I don't know how to respond to this, because as a non-profit, there's a lot of times this is why we exist in the first place, right? To help people who cannot help themselves.
Paradoxical.
But I often get documents from my subordinates that are supposed to be passed on to the headquarters. So I need to check it and just make sure that it is correct before it goes on. That is not rescuing, because I do ask them to submit, but I often would have to go in and correct things and correct grammar and check the numbers are correct. And
so you're trying to be more productive rather than, you know, avoiding the iterations that go along the way. Anders, I think you're muted.
yeah, I was just scolding my kids for being too noisy.
Oh. Okay. And I think Natalie also resonates with that. She says maybe a risky, but sometimes not because of the person, but because of the, you know, you don't want to waste the time and resources. I think, how does your team members feel normally about that, Natalie? Is that some...
Yeah, I suppose maybe my organization, because we have a lot of different departments, and also I don't know if this is unique to the department, to my organization, or that I'm trying to justify this. So I'm trying to process it. But in our organization, a lot of information is not centralized. It's not easily accessible. So information tends to sit in different places, and we have a lot of new staff. So sometimes I'm just, you know, even just moving around, and I notice people who are doing pieces of work, and it's just like, oh, I realize that they don't have certain information, or they don't have what they need to know just because of the way the organization is structured, and maybe like the way, you know. So then I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I should quickly jump in and just make sure this person knows ABC, or that like don't waste time doing this because you don't know this, but another department did this like 2 weeks ago and it's gonna get rejected. So I feel like a compulsion to jump in and like just save them the heartache because of the way the organization is. But I think that could be different, because that's not wanting to rescue people because you don't want to see them suffer. It's genuinely, if they knew it, they wouldn't want to do it as well, because it's like a drain on resources. So, but I definitely do the other type of rescuing, which is, oh, I don't want to see them suffer, I better correct this for them, and then they don't learn. So I think I would distinguish, perhaps. Sometimes it's a personal thing, and sometimes it's, that's just a thinking. I'm just processing it.
No, but thanks for candidly sharing that, right? Because the nature of your job also has to allow for that. And as long as you're not like taking the spirit away while doing that, I think it's still not like a diminishing trait or accidentally diminishing, because you're also still aware of what you're doing, right? So if I can actually share my personal experience, right? So when I like a few years ago, when I started with Deloitte, and I was assigned a couple of team members with whom I had to work on this particular design, I would always end up asking them. I would be the one to offer a lot of help. Do you need something? Is there any way that I can be helpful? Where it started appearing as me trying to take control of certain things, or if the noblest of the intentions can have the diminishing impact, right? So what ended up happening is a lot of things would come to me because it unconsciously I created this culture where everything has to go through me, otherwise it's something wrong or something that I'm trying to take control over. So I guess the lesson that kind of that comes along with the rescue part is, as long as we don't end up inflicting certain impact that we don't intend in the first place, it doesn't necessarily have to be a diminishing impact at all. So if there is no other comments, maybe we could go to the last trait.
What about the Pacesetter? This is a leader who's leading by example. Haven't we been taught this? This is a leader who says, I'm going to set the pace for quality, for agility, for innovation, for customer service. I'm going to set the pace. Other people will notice what I'm doing, and kind of because I'm the leader, they will naturally follow, right? But does it work that way? What happens when the leader gets out ahead a car length or two? Do other people speed up? They tend to hold back. Now, I've got 4 children. My youngest, he just turned 11 last week. This kid loves to run. There's nothing he loves more than to run, and he loves to race mom to the bus stop. Okay, of course he loves it. Why? He wins, of course, because I'm in good mom mode, right? And good mom mode is, it's close, or he wins. But every now and then I forget, and I go into this sort of middle-aged, like, wow, this might be the last person on the planet I can still run faster than. Okay? This is it, my last glory moment. And I go speeding down to the bus stop, and I get there first, of course. Catching my breath, I turn around, and what is young Joshua doing? He's walking. It's almost a saunter. And what does he say when he catches up? Now, I want you to think like an 8-year-old. Yeah, he says, we weren't racing that time, Mom. Right? What happens when we can't keep up with the superstar or the manager who's setting the pace? More often than not, when we set the pace, we create spectators, not followers.
All right. Anybody identifies themselves with this trait? What do you think are the downside of having a pace setter at work? Any thoughts? Some people might call it setting better standards so that people can follow. But like the author was sharing, if you set the standards too high, we end up creating spectators, not followers.
I think we heard from a few of our friends here. It's also about how you set the pace and set the standard, right? If we do it in an inspiring way, as what all leaders do, it is possible to get people to run along with us. But if it's all about this is the standard and you put people down, that's when things get a little bit dicier.
Yeah. And we need to also stay mindful of the kinds of things that we set standards for.
Yeah, I'd agree with Wayne. I think that you know, if you can do it in an inspiring way where people feel like, oh wow, you know, that's so awesome. You know, and you kind of like want to strive for excellence because you see that person demonstrating it and living it. I think that's a good thing. But yeah, I think there are also maybe pace setters where you do set the pace and then people they don't become spectators. They actually try to run and keep up and then they burn out, which I wonder if that happens sometimes in the NGO setting because everyone's there because they're passionate, right? I mean, it's definitely not for the money. So people set the pace. You also want to run and keep up because we're here for the same goal. And you use that language in the NGO, right? We're here for the same cause. It's very like feelings and emotion based. So I think one of the other like downsides is, yeah, people do run and then they just burn out and they drop out.
Burnout, yeah, I agree. Any other perspectives? Okay, if not, Farah, do you want to run the Menti? Because we would like to get a vote from you guys. Which of the traits do you identify with the most? And then we'll be going to a short breakout activity right after that.
All right, let me share my screen.
Yep. So if you can just take your mobile and go over to menti.com.
So the code is 45914255.
Can we please get some votes? What do you think? Which of the traits do you think you have it the most?
We choose just one, correct?
Yes.
One that you resonate the most.
Yeah. Oh.
So evenly distributed.
Yeah.
This is like watching the billboard.
I'm surprised. I thought there would be more the idea guy.
Okay, there we go. That's our idea guy.
Optimist.
Okay, we have a lot of optimistic people in the room.
Yeah. Okay, so perhaps I could give you a little bit of context about what we're going to do next in the breakout activity. So if we can probably pull up that question, Wayne. The next slide, yeah. Yeah. So I guess the point that we're trying to make is it's not about whether you're being a multiplier or a diminisher. You know, it's about stringing as many multiplier moments as possible in your teams. Like even if you're accidental diminisher, how can you become that liberator, the challenger kind of a personality, and how can you string those inspiring moments and create the best experience for them? So, and most of the times it doesn't have to involve something big. It involves something small, right? So what is that smallest experiment you might take in the next 30 days that might address your accidental diminisher trait, the one that you voted for, right? So for example, the idea guy, I think Craig was sharing something like a think tank. So the smallest experiment you could think about is whenever you're coming up with the fountain of ideas, you know, probably pause for a bit and ask yourself, is this something that's critical? Will this benefit the customers or simply disrupt what my team is already working on? And based on the answer to that, you can either put the ideas in a think tank or bring the attention to the teams. So similarly, for accidental diminisher trait that you may have come up, you need to just come up with a small experiment you can try in the next 30 days. Is that agreeable with everyone? Shall we go into a short 10-minute session into the breakouts? Okay. You'd be seeing the notifications. If you can click join, that'd be great. See you back in 5:50.
Is the reason why I'll sing the night into the morning. I'll sing the fear into your praise. I'll sing my soul into your presence. Whenever I say that, let the devil know not today.
But you've got an interesting story. Would you be willing to share a little bit?
Okay, in what sense interesting story? Okay, so I was telling my group that I was surprised when I did the survey that I was a high score in terms of an accidental diminisher. And I was thinking what I wanted to know. So they're asking, so what do I want to do next? Actually, I want to confirm to see whether I am actually a diminisher. So I was asking around for free surveys to give my staff to get a feedback to see whether that is true or not.
That is such a simple but very effective experiment, Rosemary. Thanks for sharing.
Sure.
Wow, that's really taking this to the next level.
Anders, would you like to share? Anders also was sharing a good experiment.
I was talking about how I often go in and have to correct language and things in document that is to be sent to the home office. But instead of just correcting and sending it, I will be better at sending it back to the person who wrote it originally and ask them to correct it and explain why they should change it and how they should change it.
Thank you, Anders. Craig, would you like to share yours?
I feel like I'm saying hogging too much of the limelight here, but I have been thinking how to bring out the best in my team. And as I mentioned, I'm a problem solver, ideas guy. And we can be working on a lot of different things all at once, which for engineers I work with can be panic inducing because, oh, but I thought we were working on that. And have we abandoned that now? You know, and so it's really being systematic in a process that is quite creative. And that's the challenge. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Renee, would you like to go next?
Sorry. Now we shared about, because I'm the idea guy, so sorry, I have background.
Okay.
So perhaps anyone from my own group would like to share as well. I know we discussed some great ideas just now. Natalie or Chachon, you want to share our conversation? So Natalie has given Chachon the green light to go ahead and share.
She's in her role, isn't it?
Oh,
resisting always on tendency.
Way to go.
Okay, sure. Maybe I'll just share. Actually, we didn't really say what we will do, yeah? Okay, yes. For Natalie, I think she was saying she's like the hands-on person, right? So she does have like a lot of good ideas to share and a lot of questions to ask. But what she has been doing, actually, she has already started is to limit herself. For example, she says she gave herself like a 7 lines in the meeting. So each time she said and shared something, she would cancel one out. And then when she reached the number 7, she will like keep quiet, something like that. So that helps her to recognize like, manage the amount of things that she would share. Yeah, so I thought that's excellent. Yeah, okay. Personally, for me, I'm more the optimist side. I think it's easy. It's more like what the video has said. All I need to do is empathize a bit with people who are totally exhausted or before they become exhausted, and then give them some space. And then after that, I'll make them climb again. Yeah, that's what it is. Farah, Farah is not included, is it? Farah is a facilitator. She's not.
Good.
But I was
What's your
also sharing.
accidental diminisher trait, Farah?
You know, I was sharing how I'm actually the optimist as well, but I was sharing about maybe some small experiments that Natalie could take for people who are always on. So one of the things that we did was one of the ideas was to dedicate a time at the end of a presentation for your Q&A. So you're not going to raise or mention any questions and whatnot until the very end. So that, and then give yourself a time. So like 5 minutes, that's the only time that I need to ask questions. So that's one of the small experiments that we could also potentially take for always on.
Smart. One of the things I'm guilty of is the rescuer. Farah, you worked with me and you've seen me, like whenever I probably won't let you try. I'll be like, no, Farah, don't worry about it. I'll take it on. I should probably stop doing that. Unless you ask for it, of course, I will never say no. Okay, I think that is sort of the end of our session. I do think you now have a better understanding of what makes your team motivated and how to be a multiplier. And I definitely believe that you have high self-awareness on your accidental diminisher traits and have created a small experiment that you launch as part of your leadership development. So maybe Wayne, if you can bring up the slides for, or we could take a picture first. If you can turn on your camera. Michael, Christina, Renee, Chiwi, if you can turn on your camera for a bit.
Okay, looks pretty nice, I have to say. Oh, yay.
Thank you. Chiwi. Okay, on the count of 3. 1, 2, and 3. Any fun posts?
Smiling was my
Fun,
fun
I
post.
guess. I have to leave it to you guys. What fun posts do you guys always do?
I was in another teleconference and they asked us to put our hands to the sides and pretend to touch the next person.
Oh, that's a nice one.
That's a pretty smart one. You're like high-fiving the person. Okay, I have to say this is a good one. Never done this one before.
Yeah, this is pretty cool. Okay, 1, 2, and 3. Thank you.
Hey.
Thanks for the idea, LJ.
Yeah.
Oh, nice, LJ.
We're definitely gonna adopt that.
We're gonna copy this.
You can do up and down also.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Like,
So I guess, like, do you have any final comments or anything? I mean, I'm gonna paste the feedback form, kind of a link. If you can just complete that, it's got like 4 to 5 questions. But apart from that, any feedback for us? Did you enjoy the session today? Any learnings that you'd like to share before we wrap it up?
it's thought-provoking. It's really thought-provoking, actually. Yeah.
I do have a question. I have worked with teams whereby everyone has all these 6 or even 8 traits, right? And it's actually quite a high-performing team because everyone is like equally intense. They are all ideas people. They all can execute. They all have very high standards. They're always on. They're very rapid. They respond very rapidly. And that's, again, the luxury I had working in startup teams, because people tend to work like that in small teams and everyone is trying to, is of high quality. So how do you gauge a team like that where they have all these traits, but somehow they can actually work pretty okay as a team?
I think I was answering this in my breakout. If you actually think about it, having this personality of an optimistic person and having a lot of ideas coming in is actually signs of high-performing individual, high-performing talent. The minute it crosses the line of high performance to accidental diminisher is when it starts to create negative impact on the people around us, right? Like if you nobody's going to judge you if you have a lot of ideas, because you will be praised for it and that would be a unique value proposition, right? But the moment you step onto other people's toes and make them look like their ideas don't matter, and then it's just you and you're the one running the show, that's when it actually becomes the diminishing trait. And similarly, I could say so for the rescuer. Your intentions are good. You want to watch out for your team members, like I was telling Farah, right? Because as long as they get to get all of the other exposure and opportunities, and I'm not stealing that thunder away from them, I think these are still qualities of high-performing kind of a team. Like you said, you guys thrive together. So I believe that you haven't started stepping onto each other's toes yet. So keep up with that.
Okay, so this is very relative to the overall performance of the team, right? Okay, fantastic.
And I think I liked Rosemary's experiment around trying to find out from time to time if you're, diminishing somebody else's impact. So the check-ins, the team bonding sessions kind of help around with that. If you're doing that, people will even let you know, like in a very joking manner, hey, here comes this person stealing my show and things like that. So just watch out for those cues and we're good to go.
Okay, do we still need the slides?
No, I guess I covered it.
Okay, done.
All right, thank you everyone for this session. It has been wonderful because of your engagement. So really, really look forward to connecting with you all in LinkedIn if you're all in LinkedIn. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. On behalf of TBN Asia and Deloitte, thank you so much, Deloitte team, Hamza, Eve, Farah, so grateful. And thanks everyone for joining us today. Terrific way to end the week.
Yay.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Renee.
All right, there comes music.
Whoever's got that
Time to
music, that's a great
party.
idea.
That's a great way to So, Christy, Wayne, is that for us?
I think we can stop the music already because everyone else is gone. Just us. Okay. What do you guys think?
It's difficult for me to gauge. You guys have to tell me.
No, actually, I thought it was really good. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, actually. I thought some of that, I mean, that's where the power of the chat,